Are we rolling? It's just me here. As you can tell by the title of this video, on January 31st, I quit my corporate cushy tech job of 9 years due to discrimination, bullying, and retaliation. Keep in mind, this is a company that is lauded for being best place to work in a lot of these arbitrary business publication surveys. It's also a Fortune 1000 company. Before I get into the thick of this, I just want to state a couple of things. First, I have screenshots, emails, text messages, performance reviews, and more that validate the claims that I will be making in this video. A lot of the text messages I have are from Black employees, current and former, who have experienced similar discrimination at the company. In light of the vitriol and misinformation being spewed by the current United States administration and their cult supporters, about diversity, equity, inclusion, I want to make a few things very, very clear. First, white men are not only more likely to apply to jobs for which they are not qualified, they're also more likely to get hired. You can just do an internet search of Black name resume hiring, and you will see what I'm talking about. The second thing I want to say, many Black employees experience this every single day, not only at the company that I will be referencing, but all over the world. And oftentimes, if they speak up, they are singled out and managed out of the business. And the third point, which is related to the second point, HR is there to protect the company. They are not there to protect you as the employee. I knew this, I've known this forever, but I really was naive enough to think that because of my high performance over the last 9 years that I would be exempt from said discrimination, which is really just an ego thing. And I learned my lesson. That's all the housekeeping stuff I wanted to share. Let's get into the thick of it. After college, I worked at the Apple Store for 5 years as a business sales consultant. After Apple, I moved to a company called PlanGrid, based out of San Francisco. They were a tech company focused on construction, and it enabled construction workers to eliminate paper in the build process, both pre-con and site construction, and upload their documents to the cloud, mark them up, notate them, etc. The CEO, her name is Tracy. She's amazing. I think she just had like her 4th child, and she created a number of other businesses in the midst of all this. I really miss her. She was amazing as a CEO. I quickly worked my way up the ranks at that company. I started off entry level, worked up to senior, and then quickly also became a manager a few years later. Right when I became a manager, the company that I'm speaking about today, Autodesk, acquired PlanGrid in 2018. At first, it seemed like a good acquisition. A lot of our values seemingly aligned with each other. And at first, everything was fine. But as the years went on, things started to take a turn for the worst. And I also just want to say, I loved corporate culture. I was good at it. I think I've managed 35 to 40 people in the last 9 years. And I would say all but 3 or 4 of them lauded me as the best manager they ever had. I think primarily that was due to me encouraging vulnerability and always being themselves when they come to work. I don't believe in this sort of separating and creating different versions of yourself. Now, obviously, no one should expect to come into a corporate environment swearing and saying ridiculous things or being creepy, of course, but there's a level of bringing your personality out at work and bringing out what makes you unique, because oftentimes, and I think I've now learned this and understand this despite thinking I was immune to bullying and discrimination, that bringing your whole self and ensuring that an organization and an entity is not homogenous is actually better for company culture. I even love corporate buzzwords, KPIs, iterate, Salesforce, fiscal year, having to learn a new acronym every other week. This is actually really enjoyable for me at the time. By the time I quit, again, a month ago, I was making $134,000 a year base with an 18% bonus. So anytime the company performed well, I've always received 100% of my bonus up until last year, which I'll get to, which would bring my total compensation gross pay to about $158,000. On top of that, every year, because I was a high performer, I always received equity. And I believe the highest amount at one time I received of equity was 50 grand that vested over 3 years. For context, I grew up in Indiana on Section 8 with a sister being raised by our single mom, food stamps, very poor projects. We didn't have a lot of money. I don't come from money whatsoever. And when I think of this attack on diversity, equity, inclusion, I experienced racism from teachers as early as first grade that I can remember. Actually, no, kindergarten. I remember an instance in kindergarten where somebody called CPS on my mom, and I remember having to go into the counselor's office and show them my arms because they were looking for bruises. Didn't have any, by the way. Don't know who called CPS, but that was something that not only we had to endure as a family, but teachers treating me differently because of the color of my skin is something that I remember as early as 4 years old. Despite all of that, which I'm light skinned. I mean, I was a little bit darker back then because I was outside as a kid playing around, but like I am light skinned. So I could only imagine what dark skinned folks experience on a regular basis as well, which is just like terrifying, horrifying, sad to think about. But despite experiencing all of this throughout school and high school and college, I always worked my ass off. I've always been a really hard worker, and I built my value and my worth off of working really, really hard to meet this threshold and beat this threshold and make six figures, all to make, oftentimes these CEOs are cisgender, white, heterosexual males, all to make them more money. What prompted me to leave is a few things. So as I mentioned before, in the 9 years I worked there, so it was essentially 3.5 years with the startup and then 5.5 years after we were acquired. But it's a funky transition because it was a different company, but we were absorbed into them. So it's like the same time frame. So technically I was at Autodesk for 5.5 years officially. And as soon as we got acquired, I got a new manager. The team kind of changed a little bit. And from the get-go, I had mentioned having concerns with trust, just in general, not knowing this new manager, how they function, etc. So we worked together for the first couple of years to build up that trust, and everything seemed okay. But there was a moment in time where they asked me, so I was living in Los Angeles at the time. In 2022, they asked me to move to Atlanta because there was an open manager position. So my official title was customer support manager. It eventually became quality manager. So think of like quality assurance. So building out and not only people managing, but managing the third-party tool that we used to essentially read through every single interaction or most interactions between the customer support team and customers, and applying a rubric to them and grading them and making sure that our interactions with customers are exceptional. Customer support and service is my background. And again, I'm really empathetic. I'm really vulnerable. So I'm like an amazing person for the job, which is why I loved and was outstanding in my role. So they asked me to move to Atlanta. And at the time it didn't make sense. I still had a lease in LA. It was, I don't know. I think a lot of it was fear because I wasn't ready to leave Los Angeles yet. And so my manager was like, it's cool. There's no hard feelings. Like, I get it. You're remote over there. Like, no problem. So I turned that down. A year goes by. I'm in Atlanta for our Black Employee Conference, which I went to every single year. And during that time, all of my colleagues were like, oh, you got to move here. You're so fun. You'll love it. Da, da, da. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready to do it. And the manager in Atlanta at the time was not a great manager. They were, I would meet with my direct reports weekly. This manager would skip so often. It would sometimes be a month, maybe 2 months before they actually met with their direct reports, which is like unheard of. So all this chaos is happening in Atlanta. And at the same time, I start noticing that employees in Atlanta who are primarily Black were not only qualified, but more qualified than some of their counterparts in Denver who were getting promoted. I get my boss's blessing to move to Atlanta. So not only did I get their blessing, when I moved, they submitted a request for me to keep my same California salary in Atlanta. Keep that in mind. This is a very important component of why I left. So I moved to Atlanta. I pack up and ship all my stuff. I ship my car on my own dime, remember, because there was no longer a position open. I'm essentially doing this of my own accord, but they all wanted me to move there because it was a shit show. So I get there, I clean everything up. I'm there for all of the directs and the employees that the other manager was neglecting. I made sure to pull all of the qualifications and the data for a lot of the employees there who were well qualified or overqualified for promotions, and bring that to my boss's boss at the time to show them, hey, people are getting promoted in Denver. Here are the people in Atlanta, the Black employees who are more than qualified. Time to promote them. Helped get them promoted. I joined somewhat of a culture council group. So I was planning events. I hosted a kids' day in the office. I hosted movie outings. I did so much, not only for the Atlanta community within the office space, but was unpaid and was on top of my 9-to-5 day job of being a customer support quality manager. So I made the move there in July of 2023. Time goes by, I'm doing all this work, I'm making sure people are getting promoted, I'm cleaning up the mess of the past manager, I'm meeting with my boss every day, and everything's seeming fine, but this is also around the time when I start speaking to HR about all the things that I'm seeing. And when I present this information to HR, I'm positioning it as, I think senior leadership needs unconscious bias training. You can't go to HR and say, well, I think these people are racist and discriminatory, because then it becomes an attack. It's about being mindful and tactful of how you position things, not only to HR, but to leadership, because if you come across as being combative, that is the first, and especially if you're a Black employee, a queer employee, a woman, like, you have to, in essence, know your place. And if you don't, and this is corporate culture, this isn't what I agree with, this is just how it is, you start to get managed out of the business. And I think because I am so outspoken, I spent the 5.5 years there, or the first 3 years at Autodesk, talking and walking in those ways until the pressure and the burden of the bullying and the discrimination and just what I'm noticing, not only for myself, for other employees, became so heavy that I think that I couldn't take it anymore. The minute that you accuse somebody of racism, that is at odds with the company's bottom line. So the first thing that they're going to try to do, and this is what I learned the hard way, is to get rid of the squeaky wheel, which is me, instead of holding their high profile, high visibility, senior managers, directors, etc., accountable. So by the winter time, I would say that I'd been talking to HR for at least a year, and they have dozens of emails of examples of what I experienced. Some of which include my counterpart managers getting publicly recognized, getting off-the-cuff bonuses. There was an internal system where you can give somebody points that you can trade in for gift cards, and they were publicly getting recognized by my boss and their boss for things that I also did, and I never got that recognition. There'd be instances where I would suggest a change of course for how we were functioning, and it was ignored. And then 2 weeks later, my white counterparts would make the exact same suggestion. And not only were those suggestions listened to, those employees were also publicly recognized with bonuses and these points, despite me being ignored when I made these suggestions. And I already mentioned noticing that there were other Black employees on our team who were more than qualified and who weren't getting promoted. So just a few examples of what the discrimination looks like. So after all this, I uprooted my life in LA. I moved to Atlanta on my own dime with permission. I got to keep my same salary with permission. I cleaned everything up. I helped people get promoted. In a nutshell, made sure that all of the employees who were being treated like shit still had a positive outlook of not only our team and the leadership on that team, but of the company. In March 2024, my boss and their boss flew to Atlanta because there was an announcement, and the announcement was the entire team would be restructured. And of all the managers, there were 6 of us, 7. I was the only one who was being moved to another manager. And not only that, for the first time in 9 years with the company, I didn't get a raise, I didn't get my bonus of 18%, and I didn't get any equity. First time ever. And I have all of my old performance reviews leading up to that, leading up to before I started speaking up about discrimination, and they're all stellar. I always got a raise, I always got my bonus, and I always got equity. But the minute I start saying, here's how Black employees are being treated, maybe we should figure out a way to focus on unconscious bias to ensure we're being fair, and then all of a sudden, I am being insubordinate. And that's what my boss said during the review when I learned I wasn't getting any compensation. The way that you moved to Atlanta was unprofessional, and we think that you need to be taught a lesson. That was my review. Nothing about fixing the team, nothing about any of the other, I was managing like a dozen projects at the time. No word of anything, like any of the work that I had done prior to that. And like, you might think, well, maybe you had a bad year. My productivity the prior year had never been higher. And I was already a really productive employee, and it had only gone up from there. And then all of a sudden I'm a problem. I had a mental breakdown. I suffered from PTSD. There was a point where I fainted. I worked from home and I was just like reeling from anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I would wake up and just be like trembling. I've never passed out before. I've always had high anxiety, but this really took me over the edge. I started going to therapy again. I had to see a psychiatrist. I'm now on an antidepressant, Wellbutrin, which I wish I didn't need that. But now that I'm on Wellbutrin, it actually has been really amazing for me. So I guess that's a positive. But the fact that I even needed to start that process as a result of not only the PTSD from knowing that like the money that I was expecting because I had bills today, I bought this house. I moved to Atlanta for this job, this company, and I bought this house to be here. And then all of a sudden, the first review after buying this house and moving here, oh, you're being insubordinate, so you're not getting any money. It fucked me up. Right away, I had the mental clarity to know that it was time for me to leave the company. So first what I did, and this is my advice to you all, if you work for a company that will pay for you to go on FMLA, which is essentially like a short-term medical leave, most of them go to 3 months. A lot of companies allow the leave, but they are unpaid. If you are lucky enough, as I was, to work for a company that would pay your full salary for you to go on this medical leave, you can absolutely do that. The ways in which to do that, I will leave you to search the internet. But what I did, I had a psychiatrist who was also a nurse practitioner sign off on my emotional well-being and that I was being emotionally abused for years by this company that led to me having a nervous breakdown and needing time to reset my mental health. They signed off on that. It was approved. So I got 3 months of FMLA leave paid for by my company. If you are in a position like I'm in a position where these companies work you to the bone, don't give a shit about you, and you feel like you are physically, mentally in need of a leave, a break, FMLA is the move for you. I highly recommend you do it. So my FMLA leave was from November, I think it was actually October through the end of December. So I basically came back to work the first week of January. On January 31st, I quit. I didn't give them any notice. I sent an email to a couple of thousand employees. I'm going to post the email on the screen now. And just an FYI about that email, I wrote that entire thing. That wasn't ChatGPT. I didn't have AI write that for me. Those were my words. So just a flex. So where am I at currently? So I am enrolled in aesthetic school. I'm going to be an esthetician. It's a 9-month program. It's something I've always wanted to do. I've been into skincare for as long as I can remember. I've always struggled with acne. You know, I've got pick mark scars. My skin is actually having a really good skin day right now, but I'm really excited to just help other people with their skin troubles. And also, I think it really aligns with who I am. I'm very empathetic. I love helping people. I honestly love one-on-one hangs more than I do social scenarios now. I'm about to be 36 years old. We have a group chat where people are like, hey, there's a drag show, or hey, there's something going on. Who wants to come? And I'm just like, no, I'm going to stay in my house because one, I mean, the primary reason is like, I shouldn't be spending money right now, but also like, yeah, I have a mortgage and I'm like, look at my surroundings. I curated a beautiful space for myself and I like staying here. I like my house. So I'm going to school. As far as money, I mean, now that the stock market is tanking because this administration is tariffing everything and it's screwing all of the middle class and working class people over, I have a little over 6 figures in savings. Really grateful for that. I also have 6 figures additionally in my 401k as like a backup emergency. I have this house that I could sell if I'm in a financial emergency. So I know that I'm better off than a lot of people in this country, but I also think that it's really crazy that I've been working at least 30 hours a week since I was 15. I'm about to be 36. So I've been working for 21 years, almost full time. I mean, full time now is over the age of 21. I've been 40 hours a week. And I'm closer to homelessness than I am being a millionaire, which I think just speaks to how stupid capitalism is and the fact that Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and all of these billionaires, I don't remember how long, like a decade ago, probably not even a decade ago, a few years ago had maybe 2 billion, maybe 3 billion, and now they all have like hundreds of billions of dollars in net worth. Meanwhile, this administration is blaming trans people and immigrants on why this country is falling apart and why people can't afford to live. instead of blaming the billionaires who are not giving us anything. I'm also in an interesting situation with my Kia EV9. Love that car. I bought it when it first came out at the end of 2023, like right when I moved here. I am currently in negotiations with Kia for them to buy it back, and I will be getting a new car probably within the next month. So I'll be sharing more on that journey soon. Of course, this channel started as an automotive channel, and so I always am trying to keep up with the automotive news, so you'll be seeing that very soon. So what advice do I have? You've made it to the end. What advice do I have for anyone who's experiencing the same thing as me? Quit your job. Quit your job. Like, if you have money in savings and you can survive, even if you don't, like, if you are somebody who's always worked really hard and you know that you can make it work, sometimes you really have to get to a dark or a bad place in order to move forward. I understand that. It shouldn't be that way. I wish we all had the self-motivation to just do it. Quit your job. Don't tell HR, because they're gonna manage you out anyway, and it will probably be worse for you. If you are being mistreated at work, if you are a Black employee and you come to work every day just dreading having to stomach the micro and macro aggressions, you have to watch your white counterparts get recognition and praise and promotions, and you are working just as hard, if not harder, to receive scraps, it's not worth it. It's not worth your mental health. And now some of you may be able to just stomach it. Maybe you're just like, I don't care, it's a job. I got a family to feed. It is what it is. Hats off to you. I don't have that ass-kissing personality. I never did. I just loved hard work, and I was really good. And I loved what I do. I love helping customers. Oh my God, like anytime there was an instance of customer escalation and they're cussing and they're upset and blah, 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 I was always the one who was sent to go email them or call them, because I am just impeccable when it comes to empathy. And it's sad that, I keep saying Autodesk, but I don't want to paint Autodesk in a broad brush, even though I've been hearing from other Black employees across the company of similar experiences. But for my team specifically, using my empathy as a way to, in a sense, take advantage of me. My other advice is tread softly around these DEI initiatives in companies, and also things like employee resource groups, which are supposed to be safe spaces, because Autodesk has a swath of employee resource groups and DEI initiatives, and I don't think they've canceled them under the current Trump administration. But considering me and dozens of other Black employees are treated like shit, all of these surface level groups and places are kind of bullshit. Like, so many of these companies, their foundation is built off of slavery. They're built on taking advantage of you as a worker. I'm really glad to present this information and share my experience, and hopefully be a part of all of their foundations crumbling. That's it. That's my advice. Quit your job. Quit your job. Go to school. Learn a craft. I've wanted to learn woodworking forever. Once I get done with aesthetic school and I start getting clients and making my money back up, I fully intend to learn woodworking. I'm really into interior design. My boyfriend is too. I really want to start building stuff for us and just learn that craft together, because I've always had an eye for those things, and I love building. Like, I've always, even when I was a kid and we could afford to buy like a new, like Aldi would have a TV cart randomly on sale. So my mom would buy a TV cart and I would just rush to put it together, because I just love that stuff. Take the course, write a book, learn how to sew. Oh, I guess one thing I will say is, if you intend to quit, whatever expensive thing you were planning on buying, buy it before you quit. I'm in the talks right now with the new car that I will be leasing, and I have to have a co-signer because I don't have income. I have been financially independent since I was 18. My credit score is 820, and I've never, ever needed to ask anyone for help until just now. And I'll say that too as advice. Don't be afraid to ask people for help. I texted my two oldest, closest friends, like, hey, here's my situation. Would you be a co-signer for me? And they both responded so quickly, like, of course, done. And I'm not gonna get emotional. As somebody who is ruled by capitalism, like all of us, it's inevitable. You're gonna have to buy things and be able to afford stuff. And it's just so crazy to me that, like, again, with my privilege and my education and the work, the money that I've made over these last 21 years, I could work all that time and have everything that I need. And I'm not rich. I'm nowhere close to being rich, but I could have a home and like be middle class, whatever that means, and just like be able to afford food and my mortgage. And then at the drop of a hat, I need a cosigner to have a car to survive, to get to work, to get to school. It's crazy. Capitalism sucks. This country sucks. To my old manager and their boss, anybody who was complicit in approving me not getting a raise and getting a bad performance review, I hope that you watch this, and I hope that you go to sleep every night knowing that you are complicit in racism and bullying and retaliation. Even though I know how much money most of you make just by word of mouth and looking at job codes on our website and stuff, I at least know your range. You are getting paid tons of money, like $200,000, probably close to $300,000 with bonuses to exploit and discriminate against people like me. So I hope it's worth it. It probably is. You probably don't care, but thank you, honestly. Thank you for putting me on the path. And I hope you get swept up in a tornado. For everyone watching this who made it this far, thank you so much for just being a part of my YouTube journey, for listening to this. And if you want to support me, like this video, subscribe to this channel. Even if you don't watch my videos, just subscribe. I need more subscribers. My goal is to get to 1,000 by the end of the year. I'm at 312, I think. So if you could subscribe, that would be great. I'm gonna put my email address on the screen if you just wanna reach out in solidarity, if you want advice. I have, again, almost a decade of leadership and manager experience at a publicly traded, very well-known tech company. I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to look at your resume. I'm happy to just give you encouragement. If you want to help me monetarily, YouTube is really weird about posting things like Venmo or Square, things like that. So if you want to help me financially, that's not what this video is about, but if you feel led to bless me in that way, you can also just email me and we can coordinate that way. Besides that, I hope what you get out of this video is self-empowerment, that no matter where you are in the chain of command in business, you are being taken advantage of, you are being underpaid, you are being exploited. And I hope that you don't wait until a company or a piece of the company puts you at your lowest place to do what you are meant to do in your life. Life is short, and under this current administration, it's probably shorter. So follow your heart, follow your mind. I love you all, thank you, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.